lots have gone on, Robert, since you and I talked last. Last time I talked, we just kind of BS'd around. Now we're on the verge of at least 2 super conferences, although Kirk Herbstreit seems to think there'll be 3. And a whole bunch of NIL stuff kind of going on. You kind of know this. Simeon, you wanted to touch base on this, so I don't know if you're still with us or not. We reached out to a whole bunch of college athletes to see if we could come on with interviews, and they all wanted paid. And I feel like just for an interview, that is your money. That's your money maker right there. But I feel like this is kind of the new... they're going to be kind of like professional athletes. They're going to want paid, and they're going to want... they're just going to want paid for anything. And I feel like that is a bad proposition to be having with these 18, 19 years old, that the solution to your young problems in life or your young responsibilities in life is to throw money at them. Anyway.
Oh, okay. It's kind of a huge problem, and I think they're starting to run into that now, even with kids who are in their 20s and 21s, because there's a lot of kids who aren't getting paid, who were told they were going to get paid. So it's becoming almost like a money management issue where there's nothing really binding some of these kids to what they're being told.
We lost Simeon, I think. Yep. Well, Simeon's chunking hardcore, so we're just... Sorry, bro. Oh, well, there you go. Can you talk without the video? Nope. He's gone. All right, say something now.
I'm glad that's the only part that came across.
Yeah, right. All right, so NIL is I think going to be a big problem kind of down the road. I really think that a lot of these kids, colleges are going to have to start doing what colleges were supposed to be doing anyway, which is educating these kids on how to prepare for the real world after football. And a lot of the kids, I feel like, especially the kids mid to upper tier who day 2 or 3 draft picks are going to have a hard time managing money. And I think that a lot of they say a lot of professional athletes are broke 3 years after they get out of the league. I think that number is only going to rise because a lot of these kids, especially the upper echelon college football players, are going to be millionaires by the time they get out of college.
Yeah, it's definitely possible that kids are going to have just ridiculous amounts of money coming out of college into professionalism, and that could also lead an issue for professional sports where, most of your kids who weren't getting paid, now they're looking for that bigger contract to almost supplement what they were making. Where I think the biggest issue is, and I just saw a couple of days ago, is that, especially in Pennsylvania, high school athletes are now going to start be getting paid.
I have a huge problem with high school athletes starting to get paid. College is one thing, right. Sure. Yeah, you're 18, sure. But now you're going to pay minors, so the parents have to get involved. And there are already horror stories about those parents who are living vicariously through their children. That is only going to ramp up even more. So I think it is a recipe for disaster, I don't know. I understand that we want everyone to have their equal cut of the pie, but some kids don't need a piece of the pie because they're already too amped up on sugar, you know? This Notre Dame stat that you sent me is very, very fascinating. Notre Dame won $75 million a year from NBC. Currently, NBC has a contract with Notre Dame to exclusively host all their home games or broadcast all their home games. So they won $75 million a year. You did the quick math. For the Big Ten at 16 teams, if they get $1 billion from Fox or ESPN or whoever, each team gets $62.5 million, which is why Notre Dame wants the 75, because they would be making the same amount of money as the Super Conference teams. However, your insights say that NBC would be absolutely asinine to sign that contract.
Absolutely. I mean, to sign one team, one sole team who hasn't won a New Year's Six since maybe 2007, no national championships, in other sports they might have, but in your big moneymaker of football, I can't rationally think of a reason why you would want only one team where you could potentially have Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, all their regular games, and then their rivalry games, which Michigan, Ohio State, that would bring in probably more money than Notre Dame Navy, Notre Dame USC. 16 teams versus one team, I would take the 16 teams, even if it is like Northwestern, Illinois, and teams you don't really want. But
who assuming there are three super conferences, you think it's the ACC? You think it's ACC, SEC, Big Ten, or are Big 12, Pac-12, which they shut down negotiations about joining? So, if you had to be a betting man and you had to put some money on it, who would you bet on?
I would say ACC and SEC are going to go together just because they have a media, there's a media deal that I think it is ESPN, ABC, they both show ACC and SEC. So I think those two would go based off of the money. And then I would say, even though they broke down, it would have to almost be the Pac-12 and the Big 12 based off of geography. So I can't imagine every Pac-12 team making the trip with the Big Ten.
Kirk Herbstreit seems to think that there's going to be 20 teams per super conference, so 60 teams total. I mean, that would kind of work out well, because then if you do 20 teams, you could do two divisions of 10. You do a conference schedule of 10 games in your division. You win your division. You meet in the conference championship, which would be the winner of the other division, and then that would formulate a playoff of, well, in this case, probably 6 teams or 8 teams, my guess is. But are we going to get, which is going to come first, an expansion, which Simeon has been begging and knocking down the door for forever, or are we going to get the first super conference with the dissolving of another conference? Which one comes first?
I would say we'd probably get an expansion first, just because of how much money and politics is played with combining the conferences, who gets what rights, who's going where, and there's, I think, more that has to go into combining two conferences than would just expanding the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. My main argument is, why haven't this already been expanded? I mean, 4 teams is, but once the pattern was very clear and obvious that the same 3 teams are probably making it in every year, and the only change-up is going to be 1 team.
Yeah.
So why couldn't we have kind of moved this along a little faster? Speaking of moving it along a little faster, as Simeon wants me to, just get through topics a little quicker as he would normally do this. You sent me a picture about top sleeper teams for each conference.
Mm-hmm.
Simeon, you can chime in over chat if you would like. ACC is NC State. I think when me and Simeon did the NC State conference, I think I had NC State as the sleeper team. However, I'm going to say Wake Forest. Wake Forest has the entire offense returning, which was like number 9 nationally. And they are going to get better on defense. You're not going to be terrible on defense forever, unless if you pull in Oklahoma. But you're going to be some better because it is a new defensive coordinator. So I'm saying Wake Forest. Are you rolling with NC State, or are you going to roll with someone else?
I'm going to roll with NC State. I just think they have a quarterback coming back, Devin Leary. I think he probably could work his way into a Heisman talk, possibly. But, I mean, looking at their schedule, their 2 big games are October 1st at Clemson and November 5th at home against Wake Forest. I mean, if they win those 2 games, that's the conference.
But it's NC State, my dude. Like, NC State, when's the last time NC State was good? 1945?
I mean, maybe it's time.
Maybe it's time has never really been a solid argument. However, I will give you that Michigan wasn't good forever, and then last year happened. Sticking in the ACC just real quick, I think Clemson's overrated. I think it's going to be hard-pressed to find a Clemson of old.
Yeah, they're going to falter somewhere within their schedule. I don't see them being as dominant as they used to be. It could be a replay of last season, where there were glimmers of this team could be something, and then they're just going to play, whether it's North Carolina State, whether it's Wake Forest, where they're just not going to be able to match up with them.
Things going to get frosty in Lincoln. Lincoln's the Big Ten, or Lincoln, Nebraska, home of Nebraska, University of Nebraska, is the Big Ten sleeper team according to this picture. I kind of agree. I told Simeon, and I think that you know this, Nebraska's either going to go 10-2, 9-3, and win a division and make the Big Ten title game, or be pretty darn close to it, or they're going to go 4-8, 3-9. I don't think there's anywhere in between.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at last season, 9 of their games were decided by single digits, I believe. They have Casey Thompson coming in at quarterback, and even though they had the season they had last year, they were second in the conference on total offense per game last season. Their defense needs some help, but, I mean, they could easily be something in the Big Ten. And they don't play Ohio State this year. So the only time they're going to face them is the Big Ten championship.
Is the sleeper team not Wisconsin because everyone expects Wisconsin to probably win the West?
Yeah.
Because, if you're talking about, like, off of last year's expectations, like, Wisconsin should be that sleeper team because Wisconsin's got the new and improved Derrick Henry in the backfield, and that offense actually probably was one of the most efficient kind of down the stretch last year. It's just that their quarterback play got in the way. I like the addition of Casey Thompson. I think Mark Whipple is nice, but I think that this could be another kind of Michigan scenario where you get 2 new coordinators, and it's 2 new coordinators, but they just make everything click right away. However, Mark Whipple is 105 years old, so you got to be weary of the Grave Digger, whatever his name is. The guy with the
Grim Reaper
scythe. Grim Reaper, thank you. Coming to get him at any moment. He could be calling a post pattern to the barn, and halfway through he, has a stroke and can no longer call plays.
Then he just does what Joe Paterno did. He just goes and sits up in the box and sits. No,
but that's where he sits, so I feel like no one would know. He's just. Can you imagine getting that report? Yeah, so offensive coordinator Mike Whipple can no longer call plays. Yikes! That would be something. Pac-12 sleeper, Stanford. Dude, I don't know. I don't know about this one. I mean, is USC not blaring you right in the face?
I mean, well, to me, USC is not a sleeper anymore just because of everything they've added and the hype around them. It's expected for USC.
So, but, okay, fair enough. But what about Oregon? I feel like everyone's thinking Oregon's going to be exactly where they were last year with Dan Lanning, defensive coordinator coming in for Mario Cristobal. They're going to be physical. They're going to have a good probably not a great defense, but a good defense, a very good defense at least. Tough at the line of scrimmage. That's fine, but you still, all programs take a slight step backwards. Great programs who were great, where their head coach left, take a slight step backwards. And so I just feel like Oregon or a team like UCLA should be the sleeper team over Stanford. I feel like we've seen all that Stanford has to offer. Stanford is still stuck in the 2010s when Harbaugh was there.
Yeah.
Harbaugh finally got out of the 2010s and updated to the 2020s or late 20-teens. Am I wrong here?
No, the sleeper team for me is UCLA. With being high on USC and somewhat high on Utah, those two are the ones that you think after last year, how Utah decimated Oregon twice and then probably had the Rose Bowl of the ages with Ohio State. UCLA, they get the running back, they get the quarterback back. I mean, they could easily be 10-2. November 19th against USC, that's the game.
They only bring back 3 starters on defense. Little concerning there, yeah. But I feel like Chip knows how to coach offense and can kind of drag along a struggling defense as long as it's half competent. I feel like there are a handful of head coaches who can do that. Ryan Day can do that, Lincoln Riley, Chip Kelly. I think the Alabama offense totally could, but they won't. Speaking of Alabama, just taking a break from sleeper teams, I feel like who's stopping them from 12-0 in perfection? I mean, you have the best offensive player in the country and the best defensive player in the country. Who's stopping
themselves?
Yeah, and do you think that the chip on their shoulder from losing the Natty to Georgia last year will keep them? Like, I feel like they will just constantly be focused and just absolutely zeroed in on the target.
Yeah, they're going to be the team that goes undefeated the entire way through. The only team that I think could really beat Alabama, and they're not in the SEC, it's Ohio State. And that'll determine if Alabama's corners are as good as what they normally are. Because, I mean, the passing offense for Ohio State is going to be incredible. Again, it's just going to be about pressure. Can they keep enough pressure on Stroud?
I mean, I don't know when the last time a team had a 1-2 overall in the draft, but Alabama could definitely do it.
Yeah.
Well, or is Will Anderson? He'll be a junior this year, right? They'll both be juniors.
Yeah.
Yeah, Simeon, I'm still good. My video's still working, I at least think. Me and Robert are having a great conversation. Simeon's kind of talking to us through the chat again. Like always, we're having technical difficulties on the worst podcast ever, so please do excuse us and how bad this podcast is. Anyway, Will Anderson and Bryce Young definitely could go 1-2 in the draft. I mean, pick an answer or pick an order. I'm sorry. Anyway, back to the sleeper teams, my dude. Sticking in the SEC, Tennessee. I think Tennessee is a good logical choice there. It's just kind of hard because of the division they're in.
Yeah. It's hard to pick a sleeper in the SEC just because there's not really any team that can match up other than kind of Georgia with Alabama. But with Tennessee, I mean, they had a lot of close games last year, almost like how Nebraska did. But they're bringing a big portion of their offensive line back. Their wide receiver, I think his wide receiver, Cedric Tillman, he's coming back. So
the quarterback, Hendon Hooker, I believe, is coming back as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, they have the right pieces coming in. It's their defense needs help. And, I mean, they also just need a lot of help with their schedule, too.
Ole Miss a real threat in the West? I would think so. I mean, Ole Miss is. I understand people are high on A&M, and our buddy Jared, he's an A&M alum, and he loves A&M. But listen, Jimbo's going to get in the way of Jimbo, just like Franklin gets in the way of Franklin. But Lane Kiffin doesn't get in the way of Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin calls plays to win games, and Lane Kiffin knows how to call offense, and he's another coach who drags along a bad defense. And he went to the school of Saban just like Jimbo did. I think it's whenever Bama and Ole Miss meet, that's the game right there.
Yeah, I mean, Ole Miss is the team that they have a really good opportunity to turn some heads. And it's just, can they pull it together? Can they make it through? Can they weather the storm? And can they just continually improve and not shoot themselves in the foot?
They do have to replace Matt Corral, but again, with a quarterback-friendly offensive system, I think that's not an issue there. Big 12 has it all wrong. West Virginia, I understand you're getting JT Daniels as the sleeper, but listen, isn't the sleeper always and forever Iowa State?
In a way, yes. But team I chose, which I get, they're not necessarily a sleeper just because of how they finished last season. I said Oklahoma State. They're they were in the championship last year, but
expectations are not high.
No, and everybody is looking at Texas, and Oklahoma's still going to be there, but it'll be the first time without Lincoln Riley that they really are going to be tested. And Baylor's still going to be good, so it's like Oklahoma State is fourth on that list. So to me, that would be the sleeper for me.
Should the sleeper, though, be Baylor? I mean, Baylor won the Big 12 last year. No one's picking Baylor. Baylor has the part-time quarterback back. They need a wide receiver running back. Defense only allowed 20 points a game. How is Baylor not being talked about more along the lines with Texas, and Oklahoma?
I think just because it's Baylor. Baylor going back-to-back would be a very rare occurrence, which would help the sleeper prediction for it. But with the way the conference looks, if you want to be technical with the Big 12, the ultimate sleeper is always going to be Kansas. Just because no one ever expects Kansas.
Get the fuck out of here with Kansas, my dude!
No one ever expects it.
Kansas is not going to... I made my dog all excited. Kansas is not going to snip. Listen, I think Kansas might win 4 games this year, and that's awesome. And I think Mr. Leipold is doing great things in Kansas, and he will have Kansas at 8 wins probably next year. But, my dude, get the fuck out of here if you think Kansas... I get what you're saying. Yeah. The premise, I accept your premise, but come on, my dude.
I mean, if they beat Texas again, if they beat Oklahoma like they should have last year, like they almost beat Oklahoma last year, they beat Texas. I mean, it could happen. Is it going to happen? Probably not. But it could.
And Oh, okay. Over under 3.5 wins.
Over 4.
Have you looked at their? Okay,
4 or
so
5.
you're saying 4.
Yeah.
Their non-conference schedule is not terrible. They have an FCS team. They have Duke that was just absolute trash last year, right?
Yeah.
And then they have, I think they have 2 FCS teams and someone else, and then Duke. But they're just absolute. They've been the dumpster fire of the FBS, but is that? And I don't really remember college football much before 2007. Have they all, even before that 2007 season where they were number 2 or 1 in the country at one point, have they always been that bad?
Yeah, I think as far as I remember, they've always been that team to have 3, 4, every now and then 5 wins, but it was never, oh, here, Kansas is coming to town, everybody get ready.
All right, so it's Tennessee Tech, West Virginia, Houston. So they're probably not beating Houston because Houston is actually a sleeper team, is my pick to win the AAC and make the college football playoff. They're getting Duke, though, and Tennessee Tech. So you're probably going 2-2 there.
Yeah.
Chance to go 3-1 because people forget West Virginia hasn't been that great. Neil Brown, ever since Dana Holgerson left, hasn't been that amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a toss-up. They could be 3-1, 2-2, and at 3-1, now they have momentum behind them to where they can get that 4th win, 5th win, maybe. But at 2-2, it's kind of. That's like still a win for them. It's just keeping that momentum high.
I also think TCU could be a sleeper, but you're right. They're going to get someone at home. They play Texas at home, although I don't think they get Iowa State at home right after Duke, and we know how bad it's well, that is the first week of Brocktober, as Brock Purdy used to be there. So I mean, but Iowa State's kind of sloppy in the beginning of the season. So I mean, maybe. I mean, they could also be a bowl team. If they get Iowa State, if they go 2-2 through the first 4, get Iowa State at home, you only need 2 other wins. I mean, That's pretty good from where the program was. Okay, let's move on because Simeon's kind of yelling at me. Cincinnati making the college football playoff last year. Is that the last time we will see a group of 5 team make the college football playoff?
I don't think so. It might not be this year, but I do think eventually there's going to be somebody else somewhere who's going to squeeze in. Now, if we go to a big realignment where we have 3 super conferences or 2 super conferences, then probably not. We probably won't have someone outside looking in.
I don't know how they're going to do it when they do realign, but I still feel like the teams that get left out, let's be real, Arizona, Colorado, Minnesota, Illinois, the teams that no one, Vanderbilt, those teams that don't have a chance on God's green earth to, as of right now, to make the college football playoff. I think that all of those teams will kind of form like an American is now, or did form, and kind of form their own conference. Do you think that the system that will be put into place will still give a chance for those teams to make a playoff format, whatever that be?
I would hope that they would. Just
same to
be, whether you give like your conference winners or however they want to do it, like you get that automatic bid, and then you have your at-large bids behind. But I mean, with the way that they handled this playoff, I would probably say no, just because there's no respect for any of them.
Speaking of Vanderbilt hasn't won a national title in 120 years. This is another picture you sent me. Missouri, they're not even the last one in the conference. It's been Mississippi State also at 120 years, and then Missouri at 121 years. Do those teams reach 200? We're talking about another 8 decades.
Any team in the SEC, I would say yes. Just because Alabama's probably not going to slow down even once Saban's gone, and you still have Auburn, Georgia, Florida, and then again once they realign everything, that's kind of like the big if. You know, you realign everybody and everything kind of, I guess, resets itself.
The SEC has been very good at protecting their own. Mm-hmm. Like, in all honesty, they should have dumped Vanderbilt a long time ago. The only reason why Vanderbilt's still in the conference is because they're one of the best baseball teams nationally and historically, college baseball teams, that is. Do you think it's going to be a sign of things to come when they start dumping? Because, listen, I don't think the Big Ten, as much as the Big Ten claims that they're traditionalists, they care about making the college football playoff. They care about Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, and now USC and UCLA. You sprinkle in some Wisconsin and some Iowa when you feel like it. But I don't think that they're as much of a traditionalist as they claim to be, and I think that they will dump teams as soon as if these super conferences come along and say you can have this team, but you got to get rid of Northwestern, and you got to get rid of Illinois, and you got to get rid of, I don't know, take your pick, another East team, Rutgers and Maryland. You got to get rid of. The Big Ten will do it like that. No?
Oh, absolutely. And as bad as it is, tradition's going to take a backseat to money. Because if you can bring in teams that are going to bring you more money, then you're going to get rid of. You might get rid of Purdue. You might get rid of Illinois, Northwestern, Rutgers, Maryland, teams that really. I mean, the fan base is kind of there, except that like in Maryland, I've been to a game. Their fans don't really show up. Michigan's fans do.
No.
So, the money is going to speak a lot louder than I think people like that. What tradition will.
Michigan has a great opportunity. We're both Michigan men here. Great opportunity to. They started the car. This year they have the opportunity to put it in gear and start getting this program rolling downhill, pushing in the clutch. Whatever. It escapes me because I've just worked a whole bunch today. But whatever little scenario you want to give out to bring this back around to make a point. Michigan had 3 of the top 12 most watched games in 2021. And I'm going to make a poll prediction. If their game at Columbus is not for the division, and they are not in position to make a New Year's Six, Michigan needs to fire Jim Harbaugh.
I'm kind of against it just because historically I like the way that he recruits. Now, the way the recruiting's kind of going now, it doesn't seem like it's as hot, but I would hold on to him, if we can still make a bowl game, a respectable bowl game, at least a New Year's Six bowl game, I would still hang on to him until we at least can figure out who we want to bring in. We lost. He went to Miami, coach from Alabama.
Gaddis.
Yeah,
Josh Gaddis.
Yeah, we missed out on that one, but if we had somebody in line, then yeah. But if we don't, then I would hold on to him for at least another one.
But this is your best shot.
Yeah.
Your 2 quarterbacks, let's just say, you have 2 quarterbacks that could probably win you the Big Ten. One already did. So you have your quarterback coming back, your entire wide receiving core, you're running, your bell cow is gone, but his backup, who almost rushed for 1,000 yards last year as well, is back. Plus you have the super sophomore in Donovan Edwards, who showed out against Maryland. Your defense is light on the line, but good in the secondary. Listen, this team has all the potential in the world to run this thing back. And again, I'm not picking them to because Ohio State is pissed off and they're just Alabama and they're just going to beat teams by 47 points and they should never have a night game ever this season because it's just going to go terrible for, Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler, who always luck into these games. But if you don't do it this year, you're never going to do it again under Harbaugh because this is your chance to get this thing moving. So I just got to disagree, and I think you got to go with Harbaugh. Or you got to get rid of Harbaugh. You got Mike Hart. You got that your offensive coordinator, your defensive coordinator. Choose someone else and roll with them.
Yeah, I mean, if there's somebody in line, like whether it's Mike Hart, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, if we're comfortable with that, move, then okay. And I understand what you're saying with, this is like a now or never kind of position, but I mean, already knowing who Ohio State's going to be, and going into that game knowing what the possibilities are. If it's not for the division, like Michigan just has that bad year, then I can see it.
Top 5 scariest places to play in the Big Ten. Again, I don't know who this is from, but you sent me the picture. It's Penn State is obviously number 1. Penn State at night, whiteout game. I think both of us and 3 of us, Simeon is now joined as a producer, so you won't be hearing him, but if he types in the chat, I will read you what he says. Whiteout game, obviously number 1. They have Ohio State. They have Michigan number 2, Michigan State 4, and Iowa number 5. First of all, those bottom 3 teams, get the fuck out of here. I know that I went to a noon o'clock Michigan Iowa game. It's louder than what it was. Finally, everyone's on the same page and they'll maze out and do all this stuff. But I don't think teams fear going into the big house. Just because you have a lot of fans doesn't make you scary. But your problem is the horseshoe being at 2, I think.
Yeah. If it's going into the horseshoe, the only time I would fear going into the horseshoe is going in, the weather's terrible on a windy day because you can't kick into the open portion of the horseshoe. But other than that, I mean, it's not much different than, other than the strength of the team, but it's not much different than playing Iowa.
But it gets loud. That stadium is built to keep noise in. It gets loud. It gets loud there. And Simeon says that they closed the horseshoe, so it's actually not as bad, and it's louder.
The only loud stadiums, the loudest stadium in the Big Ten is Penn State on a whiteout, which they've proved that when Michigan played them. But I just don't feel...
Where...
Go ahead.
No, I was sorry. I thought you were done with your thought, but I understand you don't feel that. But still, if you're reviewing the week schedule ahead, right? You see, I don't know, Michigan State, any team. You see Michigan State at Ohio State. You immediately think Ohio State's going to win that game. But if it's the reverse, you're like, okay, there's a possibility there.
Yeah. Looking at it that way, yeah, I could see how you would choose Ohio State being more of a threat stadium-wise. But even if you take Michigan or Michigan State and you look at when they're playing each other, I would probably say that walking into Michigan State would be worse.
I don't know about walking into Michigan State. Like, what makes Michigan walking into Michigan State so scary? I think, honestly, it should be Penn State, Ohio State, and then Iowa. I think, those fans sit really close to the benches. Listen, we've talked about this and we've joked about this. You end that first quarter, you got to turn and wave to them kids. Yeah. It just takes the air right out of your football team. And October 1st, Michigan heads right on out to Iowa, and I think we both agree that's an L. So that's one L for Michigan, and they better live rent-free the rest of the way until they get to Columbus. Is jump around not anywhere in there? Like, how is jump around not in top 5? Like, at least if you're going to leave the other 4 teams, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, and you take out Michigan State, how is Wisconsin not in there, my dude?
I don't know if it's just because Wisconsin hasn't been as good as what they've been in the past or whatever, but I would put Wisconsin in, and I'd even throw Nebraska in, because even though Nebraska hasn't been that great, the games have been close, and then, you know, they turn the lights down and they throw the red lights out there. I mean, it's all about psychological, you know, like, takes you out of your groove.
Well, they do become like the 3rd largest city in Nebraska, like the football stadium does on game day, which I think speaks, 1, to the level of nothingness in Nebraska, and 2, the love for that program. And me and Simeon talked last week about how you better be pretty careful if you go and fire Scott Frost, because you made the same mistake with Bo Pelini, I believe his name was. 9 wins, 9 wins, 9 wins, 10 wins, 9 wins, you know, whatever. Just wasn't making BCS national champion, wasn't making those, the BCS games, the national championship games. Colin Cowherd says, you fire Bo Pelini, you better be careful, because 9 wins is about what your program is. I seem to think in this new age of money, that's not true anymore, because there are so many good donors at Nebraska. And you can turn a little into a lot with a high-tempo, good schemed offense. But there is something about Nebraska that I think just terrifies people walking into there. Listen, it's loud. You wear red. That just, you know, kind of dazes you, I think. So I'll get on board with Nebraska in there. However, I'm taking out Michigan, Michigan State. I'm putting in Camp Randall, and I'm putting in Lincoln, though.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I am going to the Hawaii game at night. I'm interested to see how the nighttime environment is, if it's any louder at night, how it is coming off being Big Ten champions. So we'll have to see there. Did you get your air conditioning fixed?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So we're back on. We're cooling down a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Excellent. Is Ohio... I don't know where I want to go with this. Is Ohio State going to run away with all the offensive awards?
I don't know. Most of them, I mean, the Blitnikoff is definitely out. That's more than likely going to Njigba. You know, Stroud's probably going to get the best quarterback. Running back, I think, is going to be up in the air, because I think that might go to Wisconsin.
Braylon
Allen.
Braylon Allen, yes. If you had to pick the Heisman winner right now, who would you pick?
Right now, I'd probably go CJ Stroud.
Stroud? I mean, you can take anyone from any conference.
Yeah,
so
I would
I'm
go
talking
Stroud.
Caleb Williams. I'm talking Bryce Young. You would still go Stroud?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go Caleb Williams. I think that he's going to be big in big games. I think USC, again, me and Simeon talked about this. USC, Lincoln Riley is going to drag a bad defense, and I do think they're bad, because I do not think their defensive coordinator is worth his contract at all. They're going to drag a bad USC defense to a Pac-12 title, and he's going to play big in big games. I mean, he's basically Jalen Hurts, but a better thrower of the football.
Yeah. My big thing with Caleb Williams is I think they're going to try and balance out their offense a little more than what Ohio State is. Because Ohio State is still going to come out, they're still going to put 55 points up on everybody that they possibly can. And Stroud will have more Heisman moment opportunities than I think what Caleb will. Because Caleb's big one will be against Notre Dame or UCLA, one of those two, where Stroud has Michigan. If Michigan at that time is a top 5 team, playing Penn State, Michigan State, the Big Ten championship, I think there's more opportunity for that moment.
I think Ohio State has the chance, their offense has a chance to be an 2019 LSU, a 2020 Alabama. They just ended it on a really good high note in the Rose Bowl. Now, granted, Utah was without all of their corners, but Ohio State was without half their offense, and they still just ripped apart Utah's defense, especially in the passing game. Here's the problem I have with Stroud. He's kind of like Dwayne Haskins, R.I.P., right?
Yeah.
He kind of stands there. He is mobile, and he is athletic to an extent, but you got to have that Heisman moment. And you don't get that Heisman moment by standing in the pocket and slicing up defenses. Because if that was the case, then that Zappe...
Oh, from Western Kentucky?
Yeah. He would have won the Heisman last year. Bryce Young, his Heisman moments came while on the move. Caleb Williams, had that play against Texas where he's falling down, heaving the ball. I do believe in Heisman moments. I don't agree with Heisman moments, but I do believe you have to have a Heisman moment, and I just don't think Stroud is going to produce that for me.
It's going to depend on the game against Notre Dame for Caleb. And if Michigan is back and is the team that is top 5, that's where it's going to be decided. And maybe Stroud throws for 515 and runs maybe for 50, and Caleb runs for 150 and throws for 210. At that point, what do you think?
If it depends on how good Notre Dame is. Right? But those are Heisman numbers. Those are very similar to what Jalen Hurts did, and the only reason Alex Grinch is the defensive coordinator at USC, thank you, Simeon, and I think Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams specifically is going to pull this offense, albeit without Alex Grinch's help, to a big Pac-12 title. Caleb, again, he uses his legs well, he throws the ball well, and he has receivers and a running game to do it. Now, it's going to be how good is his competition, because the Pac-12 is and the only 2 teams on his schedule are going, as you said, USC or UCLA and Notre Dame. Speaking of Notre Dame, right now they have the number, I just checked today, they have the number 2 2023 recruiting class. Okay?
Yep.
I did not see that coming. I like their defensive coordinator, but everyone knows who listens to this podcast knows my problem with defensive coordinators and them being head coaches. I'm not saying you see a steep decline in year 1 because the offense is still there. They're still going to have big, powerful offense. They have line. They're going to run the ball well. The offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, is there. But what I'm saying is I wouldn't be shocked if they go 9-3, 8-4.
That's a very believable record, and looking at the way that their schedule is, it's definitely possible. They have a very tough schedule this year. And when was the last time that you had a new coach who wasn't a well-known head coach at their first year out of college have the number 1 recruiting class, or 2?
Yeah, I can't name it for you. I really can't. It is impressive. Listen, if you get started off, if you go up to the Horseshoe, which I guess that I see your point why Ohio State isn't scary, because there have been precedents of teams walking into the Horseshoe and just obliterating Ohio State. Oklahoma from a couple years ago, Virginia Tech from a couple years ago. Michigan State did it. Like there's no home.
Oregon did it last year,
Ohio
right?
State or Oregon also did it last year. Like, if there's no momentum, that crowd is silent. And where I think what elevates Penn State to one of the best environments is they're going to be loud whether their team is good or not. Like, unless if they're down 24 in the fourth quarter. But if it is whether it's a 3-point game in the first quarter or a 17-point game, start of that third quarter, you're going to have people screaming in your ears because they believe one play is going to change the tide of the game. And most of the time, it's that crowd noise factor that does it. Notre Dame walks into the Horseshoe. Let's just say they get a win. First of all, Ohio State and Ryan Day, they got to be checking the mirrors. Yeah. I'm not saying it's freak-out time in Columbus because Ohio State has a history of losing early but then rebounding, which I think that they would do. But listen, that win would say more about Notre Dame than Ohio State, in my opinion. Marshall, California, UNC, BYU, Stanford, UNLV, Syracuse, Clemson, Navy, Boston College, USC. So Notre Dame is facing 1, 2, 3.5 potential college football playoff candidates on its schedule.
Yeah.
That's unreal. Do you think that that's why that they're asking for $75 million? Because they're like, hey, we can build our schedule however we want. We can give you the games if you want them.
Yes and no. I think they know they can put whoever on their schedule. Will they? More than likely not. They'll sprinkle in your lesser teams just to, fill the schedule. But I just think a lot of it is the fact that they know that they are the sole team for NBC. And, they say that they want to value their independence, but I don't buy the independence. I see more of like the greed of knowing you can essentially ask what you want, knowing that you could potentially get it if NBC can't sign anyone else or any other conference.
Who is, once USC, UCLA join Big Ten, who's the top dog immediately? Is it still Ohio State or does it change?
I would say it's still Ohio State until we see how USC and UCLA handle, or even Ohio State handles, the cross-country travel.
It's not going to be that bad, though. It's really not.
It seems like it won't, but for USC, that's every week, almost every week, except for the home game. So it might be every other week. You're practicing, getting on a plane, flying 4 hours, playing, flying back 4 hours, like if it's 4 hours or more. But that eventually that's going to play, I think, a big part on like the players. It's a lot of scheduling compared to, we're only going to Washington today. We're only going down the road to UCLA. We're only going to Oregon. Now we got to go to New York. Now we got to go to Maryland. Now we got to go to like Nebraska, Michigan, Ohio.
I'm going to finish up the podcast with this. I really feel like people aren't giving Georgia love. And is that because Georgia had such a dominant defense last year that there's no way they can do that again? Because let's be honest, Georgia's offense has never gotten them close to winning a national title, at least in recent memory. Their best offense, all-around team was that team that Jalen Hurts came in relief of Tua Tagovailoa and took over in the SEC title game and beat, right?
Yeah.
And that was probably their best all-around team, at least in my opinion. Are we sleeping on the defending champions?
I feel like yes and no. part of me believes that people are looking at Georgia as a replay of LSU from 2019. LSU had the great offense. Georgia had the great defense. Georgia had LSU had an okay defense, and Georgia has like the okay offense. And then the very next year, LSU was not that great. But at the same token, Georgia still has a decent offense coming back. So I could see them making the sleeper argument, but in the same token, I couldn't.
I think that you don't. I mean, I don't know. If you were to take Alabama out of the picture, take Alabama out of the conference, wouldn't you still pick them to win the conference?
Yeah.
Right? But again, it's Stetson Bennett. I understand Stetson Bennett stabilized the ship, but if you don't have that dominant defense, you're going to have the offense, and Stetson Bennett was okay because teams knew that, A, Stetson Bennett stopped turning the ball over, so you weren't going to get the ball back. So you better score some points, but you weren't going to be able to do that on that dominant defense. Is Stetson Bennett, he's going to start the year, is he going to finish the year as quarterback of the Bulldogs?
I think he will. I think he'll improve on his consistency, and once they get that momentum going, if he doesn't do anything to jeopardize it, then there would be no reason to change the quarterback, change the momentum, and change the chemistry. So I think he's going to start from beginning to end, barring any injuries or...
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first from our college football insider, Robert. Stetson Bennett, your quarterback and Heisman winner for the Georgia Bulldogs. Everyone, this has been another episode of 4th and 1 Podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at 4th and 1 Podcast. Go like and subscribe on YouTube. Junior, if you are listening, I will just absolutely tear apart your fantasy team once we have drafted, because let me be honest, I'm not scared of you. I'm not scared of anyone in this league. Y'all a bunch of pansies, and y'all going to get hammered by either myself, who's just going to wing it day of draft, or by Kyle, who doesn't even watch football. Okay? That's how this is going to roll. You wanted all the smoke, Junior. You're getting all the smoke. So this has been another edition of the 4th and 1 Podcast. Wash your hands, you filthy animal. Robert, thank you so much for being with us. We will definitely have you back on sometime where, I don't know, Riverside isn't giving us a problem. God bless you all, and peace out.